Hello, everyone, and welcome to Slash Film Daily for Tuesday, December 4th, 2018. On today's episode, we're going to talk about the latest film and TV news, and I'll play clips from my interview from the set of Captain Marvel with star Brie Larson. This is Slash Film Editor-in-Chief Peter Soretta, and joining me on today's podcast is Slash Film Managing Editor Jacob Hall.
Hello, hello.
And Senior Writer Ben Pearson.
Hey, what's going on?
Okay, guys, we got a bunch of stuff to get to, so we should just get to it. Let's start off with Netflix. Yesterday they announced that the Christmas Chronicles, the film starring Kurt Russell, was watched by 20 million people, which they claim is the equivalent of a $200 million opening week box office. Jacob, is that correct?
Netflix is patting themselves in the back a little incorrectly here. Yes, it is impressive that 20 million people watch Christmas Chronicles. There's no doubt about that. That is an enormous amount of people. That's an incredible number. And Netflix, who is usually very shy about their numbers, actually is good for them. Well, good for them. Pat themselves in the back. Release the press release, saying that. That is all well and good. However, I do think it's a little disingenuous to say Christmas Chronicles would have been a $200 million opening weekend movie, because Christmas Chronicles, as we discussed in the show yesterday, for those of you who didn't hear, is not that great of a movie. And if you could put that thing in theaters, put it in 3,000 theaters, there's no way it would have made $200 million. I mean, it's a family movie for sure. But is Christmas Chronicles the movie that you leave your house and get dressed and bundle up for winter weather and spend, $50 in popcorn for you and the kids? It's not the kind of movie that's going to be an event in theaters. It's the kind of movie that you put on while you decorate the Christmas tree and while you wrap gifts and while you're just trying to stay home and stay warm in the Christmas season, while you and the kids or the family members all hang out and watch it. So yeah, Christmas Chronicles being seen by people is incredible, and that's great for Kurt Russell. It's great for Netflix. It's great for everybody who made this movie. But I'm just not convinced that Netflix saying this would have been a $200 million movie is accurate. I mean, it's the same way how video game developers and publishers brag about their game making $600 million as opening weekend, and it's never mentioning the games cost $60 instead of $15 for a movie ticket. But what do you guys think? Is this as impressive as Netflix says it is, or we should be talking about this conversation in a different way?
I mean, I think Netflix has theatrical envy. Like, there is this whole competition between the exhibitors and streaming. And I think they're also trying to, get a deal done where they can do day and date in theaters. And they're trying to show, exhibitors that there is a market for this. Would those 20 million people have paid $15 a ticket to see, that movie in theaters? No. The millions and millions of people that read Slash Film every day, would those people go to a newsstand and pay $5 every day to read it in physical form? I am under the belief that probably would not happen. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's the ease of use. The more barriers you put up, the harder it becomes. Netflix does cost money. These are paying customers in a way, but they're paying for a lot more than just Christmas Chronicles. So I think, it is a little bit ingenuous, but, I don't know. I think it's impressive nonetheless. 20 million people goes to show you that we're probably going to get a lot more of these holiday, like almost Hallmark Channel movies in the future on Netflix.
Yeah, there's a story we did not run that broke a few days ago where the head of programming for Hallmark had an interview where he pretty much said, yeah, we're not worried about Netflix making holiday movies, but the fact that the interview existed in the first place suggests that Hallmark is worried about Netflix getting in on their turf.
Yeah, I think they have something to worry about there. Netflix is conquering everything. They've conquered stand-up specials. They're doing magic specials now Hallmark movies, like, anime, animation, like what documentaries, what have they not gotten into at this point? I guess porn?
Marvel superhero movies starring proper MCU actors.
Yeah. I guess that, yeah. But I mean, they did buy their own comic company, and they're probably going to have comic book movies and shows.
It's very true.
So
they also have Bright. They've entered the bad blockbuster area too. So.
While we're on Netflix, we should talk about Friends, because there was this big stir yesterday as news hit the web that Friends was going to be taken off Netflix next year. And then we learned later that wasn't happening at all. Jacob, what is going on here?
Yeah, what happened was an expiration date for Friends popped up on Netflix for January 1st, 2019, and actually the internet went crazy because Friends, despite having been over for over a decade, remains wildly popular. And when it entered the service in 2015, when Netflix bought it or bought the rights to stream it, it was a huge deal. Like all these lists and articles and editorials about Friends started popping up that year, and it was kind of crazy that once again Friends was in the limelight. And so people are still very much impacted by the show, and it's gained a huge new following. Netflix paid $30 million a year to keep it on the air for these past few years. And like I can speak from personal experience, my wife puts on Friends when she like is cleaning the house, or when she's cooking, or when she's hanging out, when she's texting her sister, or recently putting up the Christmas tree, wrapping Christmas gifts. It is just her comfort food. It's something that she is having access to. It means a lot to her. And today, the update that I want to talk about is we learned that Netflix paid $100 million to Warner Brothers to secure Friends for one more year.
But Jacob, Netflix is creating all this original content. Why would they spend $100 million on this show that, aired years ago, decades ago at this point?
Yeah, I guess I think it ended in 2004, 2003.
Yeah.
But I think the easy answer here is that Netflix knows what's keeping people subscribed. That they see the numbers that we don't. I mean, we don't know who's watching all the original shows if it's in the hundreds of thousands or millions, but surely millions of people are still streaming Friends, and they may be making their own sitcoms and their own comedy series, but Netflix does not have like a nostalgic favorite of their own. Like nobody's nostalgic or excited to like this. Nobody wants to bask in revisiting a Netflix show yet, but they want to bask in revisiting Friends because that show reminds them of a time, or reminds people of a time, before Netflix, back something they can remember fondly, something they can half watch while they do other things. And Netflix does not make that kind of material because that kind of material has to age into existence.
Yeah. There was this report back in April that suggested that 80% of Netflix's eyeballs were on licensed content. So that means 4 out of 5 people watching Netflix are watching things like Friends or The Office. I remember the Anchor reported that episode 1, season 1 of The Office has been watched more than 80 million times on Netflix. I think these shows, it's what you're saying, people want to revisit them. They're rewatchable because they're comedies, but also they have many, many seasons. Like the biggest Netflix show, I think, is what? Like House of Cards, which has like a handful of seasons at this point.
I mean, there are some other animated shows that pump out 2 seasons a year, but that doesn't count. I mean, House of Cards or Orange is the New Black, have 5 or 6 seasons. So that's it.
The Office has 201 episodes. 9 seasons. That's pretty insane. So I think it's very telling that Netflix is paying $100 million to keep
for
Friends.
1 year. And even then, Warner Brothers may even take Friends after next year and add it to their new streaming service, which means that Netflix is so desperate for 1 year of more Friends that's shelling out, knowing they may lose it again. So that's an insane number.
Ben, any thoughts on this?
I was just thinking about, one of the things that sort of ties into what Jacob said. Maybe one of the other reasons that people are really, love revisiting Friends is because it's really one of the last huge sitcoms from the era before all of our entertainment became so splintered. And the idea that people can revisit this thing that everybody used to watch because back then there were only so many channels, and it was a show that was part of the national conversation in a way that really only like HBO shows and huge, like maybe Stranger Things is probably the biggest example of like a Netflix original that has sort of captured the zeitgeist in a similar way. But yeah, I think that probably has a lot to do with it too. It's just sort of this relic from a different era that people look back fondly on.
Yeah, I know that if they ever put MASH on Netflix, I'll be binging MASH all day, every day. So I get it. Netflix, as they lose more and more older things to other streaming services, I wonder what's going to happen, because I like watching my older shows, and my older shows are still on DVD. But the ease of streaming, whoever offers me MASH first, the stream in full, I will go there and I will pay them money.
You know how I said The Office has over 200 episodes? I just looked this up. And House of Cards has 70-something episodes because, Netflix has shorter seasons. So, that's a huge difference in content that can even be consumed. And Anyways, I don't know where I'm going here, but I just thought that figure was interesting. Let's move on to the Prince musical that was announced to be in the works, but this isn't a biopic. Ben, tell us about it.
Yeah, so the 1984 rock musical Purple Rain was sort of like a loosely biographical story of Prince's life, but now Universal Pictures has acquired the rights to several classic Prince songs, and they're developing an original movie that is not going to be a biopic, but instead is going to tell a narrative using the songs to sort of string the narrative along and using those songs as connective tissue there. So I think the biggest comparison point would probably be something like Mamma Mia, which is another Universal movie that, I mean, the two Mamma Mia movies that exist right now have made over $1 billion worldwide at the box office so far. So that's, I mean, there's clearly a template there for this to work. We don't know.
Well, there's
anything...
also that Beatles movie Across the Universe.
Right. Yep. That's
which
one
was
too,
not as successful, but has a kind of cult following to it, I think.
Right. Yeah. I think there's really like two ways that you could go. You could or maybe three. You could have like an arty success, an art house success, something like Across the Universe. You could have like a mainstream pop success like Mamma Mia, or you could have something that tries to be a mainstream pop success, but sort of ends up failing. And I'm reminded a lot of Rock of Ages, which is like a jukebox musical that tries to tell a brand new story that uses like 1980s hair metal songs as that movie's connective tissue. And that was a Broadway production first. But still, that movie, I mean, Tom Cruise sings, and that movie has some sort of goofiness that I think it has its charms, but it's certainly not like the financial success and even the creative success that some of these other projects are. So we don't know who's going to be involved with this. We just know that Universal basically won the equivalent of a bidding war. The chairman of Universal worked really hard to lock down these rights to the songs, and we don't know anybody, who's going to be involved in terms of filmmakers and stuff like that yet. But yeah, fans of Prince's music should be maybe cautiously optimistic about this. It depends on the approach, really.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Let's move on to Showtime's Halo series, which has lost its director, Rupert Wyatt. Jacob, what is going on here? I hear that this might be in trouble.
Yes. Earlier this year, Showtime officially announced, after literally years of rumors, that they're making a Halo TV show based on the popular Xbox Microsoft video game series. And they announced that Rupert Wyatt, the filmmaker behind Rise of the Planet of the Apes and the upcoming Captive State, was going to direct the pilot, along with a few other episodes in the first season. And just yesterday, we learned that Rupert Wyatt has departed the show. And as usual, with every kind of departure, the stated reason was scheduling reasons. But there seems to be a little bit more of the story that we have heard through the grapevine, that the show is having some speed bumps. It is struggling. It is growing increasingly expensive, increasingly cumbersome, and Showtime is getting cold feet. I mean, look at Game of Thrones is huge now in terms of like budget and scope and scale, but it took almost a decade of fandom, of building up this reliable fan base of people who were going to stick by it through thick or thin in order to justify those costs. Whereas Halo, well, a well-known video game brand, is still a video game brand, and one that's seen better days. The days of the original Halo trilogy, the first 3 games, those are a decade in the past. I mean, the past few games have done well, but they have not grabbed the zeitgeist in the way that the first 3 did. And if Halo, at the time of its at the height of its powers, if they can churn through Peter Jackson, Guillermo del Toro, Steven Spielberg, Neil Blomkamp, and not get made, then trying to get it made now on the budget they're apparently facing, I'm not surprised Rupert Wyatt's gone. Either because of creative differences that they're masking, or because they literally don't know what they're doing with this and they can't keep them on forever. But Peter, what do you think? Is a Halo a good fit for Showtime right now?
I don't know. All those names you mentioned are like amazing for this property. And in addition to those filmmaker names, Alex Garland wrote the script to that movie. I think D.B. Weiss, he's the showrunner of Game of Thrones, did a rewrite. Like, they had insane talent involved, and they couldn't get that off the ground as a movie. It seemed weird to me when it was announced as a show time original series, because usually my view of Showtime original series is they seem like lower budget than, the HBO kind of stuff. And Halo, I'm not a video gamer, but I've watched my friends play a lot of Halo. And it doesn't seem like something that can be done on the cheap. Like, it really seems like that sci-fi world, is going to take some serious money to get it to look good and to work.
Halo's story kind of stinks. I mean, the lore is interesting. The basic, building blocks, there's potential. But playing those games, you don't play them for story. You play them for the epic scale and for these massive gun battles and for going to these strange new worlds and blowing them up. It is very much this intergalactic war story full of aliens and monsters and creatures and vehicles. I cannot imagine this being anything, less than the most expensive TV show ever made. So Rupert Wyatt, who's like a really experienced, really, really reliable filmmaker, the kind of guy who you bring in, give him a script, and he says, "Yep, I can make this happen." He's that kind of filmmaker. If he can't get his head around it, or if he's leaving for that reason, and not just scheduling reasons, and I think there's something really going on here. But then again, it could just be scheduling reasons. I could be overblowing this. I hope I'm not. I mean, I really hope this comes together, because you know what? I would love to see a Halo series done well.
I'm not sure if we need this. From my understanding, this show is going to star Master Chief, and I feel like I know in the games, I get it. Master Chief looks cool, but there isn't much to him. We are Master Chief, and we there's a mystery to who's underneath that armor and stuff. And I feel like for a Halo TV show to work, in my mind, and this is someone that doesn't play the game, so I could be totally from, an unknowledgeable standpoint here. But for my mind, Master Chief needs to be just a side character that kind of comes in every, episode, a little bit. That you're kind of wonder, what do you think, Jacob? Am I off base there?
Oh, no, you're not. Master Chief is you. The game's our first-person shooter. You're in his shoes. So there are all these intentional blanks left in the character that you fill in with your own experience, your own opinion, your own knowledge, because the game asks you to be this character. So even though Master Chief will apparently be the main character in this, which will probably involve him having to take off his helmet, which he never does in the games, I think the best approach would be looked at. This is going to sound really silly, but looked at Happy Days. Looked at the first season of Happy Days, where Richie Cunningham, the ordinary guy, was the main character, and off to the side was the cool Fonz, who would occasionally pop in for some advice and leave mysteriously. Everybody said, "Oh, that's Fonz. He's really cool." And in the early days of Happy Days, Fonz was special because he would only pop in and be this enigma for a few minutes. And then once they started leaning on the Fonz to be the main character of the show, it stopped being so special. So you know what? Master Chief needs to be early seasons of Happy Days to Fonz, not later seasons Happy Days of the Fonz.
I 100% agree here. Speaking of people under the mask, Star Wars live-action TV series for Disney Plus streaming service is filming, and we're getting some rumors from the set of The Mandalorian about what the basic plot is about. Ben, what do we know?
I would say that if you would like to go into The Mandalorian completely unspoiled, maybe fast forward a few minutes. This could be something that appears in a trailer for all we know, like the first teaser or something. We don't know, but
this seems to me like it's the kind of selling point,
synopsis kind of thing. Yeah, it very well could be.
I could be completely wrong, so skip ahead if you don't want to know anything.
Yes. So some leaks about The Mandalorian, which is the new Star Wars live-action show. It's going to be on Disney Plus that Jon Favreau is creating. Have sort of come on to Reddit recently, but Making Star Wars, which is a site that has a pretty good track record for Star Wars news, has confirmed one of the little snippets that has popped up on this Reddit leak, saying that they have heard similar things from their own sources. So the Reddit post says, "I guess the Mandalorian encounters a baby on one of his missions that he's supposed to kill, but instead of that, he ends up saving it, and a lot of the rest of the story revolves around their growing relationship and his efforts to keep the child safe and protected." So it's basically the classic hitman with a heart trope, and I actually looked this up, and it has a full tvtropes.org entry with hitman with a heart, and you can see dozens and dozens of examples if you actually want to see how this has been used in film and TV and literature and all that stuff many times over the years. So I'm not sure that, this is certainly not new territory. This is pretty standard hitman story kind of stuff. Also, apparently, the importance of that baby might have something to do with the rest of this story. Making Star Wars points out that a previous rumor they heard said that the show was going to be focusing on restoring the planet Mandalore, and exactly what that means, we're still not sure. But it is possible that this baby that the Mandalorian character is supposed to be protecting could be maybe the key to restoring the planet Mandalore. So there's a lot of speculation to be had about that. But yeah, those are the little snippets of information about the show that have come out recently that we know about.
The important thing here is the baby is not Luke Skywalker. Because this show takes place much later in the timeline. Jacob, what do you think of this first synopsis, this rumored leak?
It sounds like exactly what I expect from a Star Wars TV show. Like, as Ben says, it is very much a standard trope, but Star Wars has always been about dressing up these standard tropes in really exciting, fun packages. So, I'm all for seeing, really cool looking hitman protect a baby. Like, you know what? If he straps a baby to his chest and like dual wields blasters while fighting aliens,
exactly.
Bring it on, Mandalorian! Bring it on! I'm all about shows where the masculine main character has to show a tender paternal side and protect something innocent, because that's what we need right now. So as basic and as overdone as his plot line is, protect the baby, Star Wars, protect them all.
Yeah, I was just thinking about Hard Boiled with Chow Yun-fat. I mean, the ending of that movie, like the final climax gun shootout is basically what you just described. So if they were to do that, if they were to lean into sort of the ridiculousness of that visual, it could be really entertaining. So just because this is a tried and true trope doesn't mean that there's not some room to turn this into something really cool. So I don't know. We'll have to see what they do with it.
And Star Wars has this big history of drawing from Japanese influences. And this is Lone Wolf and Cub. Mandalorian's going to raise his baby to be his like lethal sidekick. This is total Star Wars 101. Borrow from Japan, make it new. But yeah, so it makes total sense.
Awesome. I love it. Let's also talk about the other Disney Plus Star Wars series. This is a Rogue One spinoff. We have now found out who is going to be the showrunner on the series. Jacob, tell us about it.
The showrunner on the untitled Rogue One spinoff series will be Stephen Schiff, a writer and producer from FX's The Americans. And Peter, ages ago on one of our very early podcasts, we talked about our dream Star Wars spin-off stories. Mine was a Star Wars story that was like Army of Shadows, the French resistance film from 1970s that presented the dark, like really seedy, unpleasant side of being a rebel spy. We both kind of agreed it's never going to happen. But now here's Stephen Schiff, a guy who wrote and produced a show that's entirely about the mundanity of being a spy in 1980s America, making a show about rebel spies. So I think my dream may be coming true here. The guy who made The Americans, which is obsessed with just the minutia of how what it means to be a spy and how that job operates and how it breaks you and how it makes you into a different person and how it forces you to make these tough decisions, is making a Cassian Andor show. And Cassian Andor, when we first meet him in Rogue One, is making really tough choices. Yet he's forced to murder an innocent man to protect himself.
His most compelling scene is the scene in the beginning of the movie, and we don't get much more of that. I hope we get more of that in this show.
So I want to see Stephen Schiff, the guy who worked on The Americans and one of the best spy shows ever made, tell us how the rebellion made Cassian Andor into that man. This is a cool pairing of writer and material.
Yes, I'm also excited. I've only watched a couple episodes of The Americans. I need to dive into that because that's like one of those shows that has a bunch of seasons, and I've been told is just fantastic.
Yeah, it's over now, so you can binge the whole thing.
Yeah. Let's move on to our last story, and that is that Marvel Studios is making a Shang-Chi movie. I didn't even know who Shang-Chi was. I'm not a huge Marvel fan. Like I only know like the main Avengers characters. That's usually what I read. Ben, tell us about it.
Yeah, I also had no idea who Shang-Chi was, but apparently Marvel, people, Kevin Feige and his team certainly have a good idea. So basically what happens is Black Panther becomes the number 3 all-time box office domestic grossing movie in history earlier this year. And Marvel takes a look at that and says, I wonder how we can do something similar and serve another underserved audience. So now they're basically looking to develop a Shang-Chi movie that is going to feature the studio's first Asian protagonist. So Shang-Chi in the comics is known as the Master of Kung Fu. He is quick enough to dodge bullets, and eventually he gains the power to create an infinite number of duplicates of himself. This character became really, really popular in the 1970s, around the time when movies like Enter the Dragon and other martial arts films were sort of taking the world by storm. And according to Deadline, this movie is going to modernize the hero to avoid any stereotypes that many comic characters of that era were saddled with. We know that Dave Callahan, who is a Chinese-American screenwriter, is going to write the script for this, and Marvel is actually having meetings and looking at directors of Asian descent or Asian American directors to tackle this movie, sort of in the hopes of following in the success that Black Panther achieved earlier this year.
Jacob, do you know any more about this character?
Oh goodness, no! This is actually kind of a really deep cut for Marvel, but I'm happy they're doing it. I remember the only thing I can remember off the top of my head is from the incredible History of Marvel book. I'll put a link to it in the show notes. Can't remember the title. Talked about how this character's earliest tales are kind of mired in some really unpleasant white guy racism from misunderstanding how to depict East Asian cultures. But fingers crossed that Marvel will do right by this, because look at that Chinese box office.
Yeah, and Marvel Studios has had some issues with representation in the past. I mean, like, first of all, the less said about Iron Fist, the better. And that was, to be fair, that was Marvel TV, not Marvel Studios. But in the movies, in the Marvel Cinematic Universe movies, the studio sort of got some blowback for hiring Tilda Swinton to play the Ancient One in Doctor Strange. But I feel like Iron Man 3 and what they did with Ben Kingsley's interpretation of the Mandarin in that movie is a really good example of a way that they were able to sort of sidestep those negative stereotypes and create a fun and interesting and fresh take on a character who, like Shang-Chi, was created in an era where it was really easy to get mired down in that kind of stuff. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what this looks like and who they end up going with and who ends up maybe directing it. And yeah, this could be a very big deal for Marvel.
Oh, and that book is Marvel Comics: The Untold Story by Sean Howe. I've added the link to the show notes. It was a must-read.
Very cool. The Captain Marvel trailer hit yesterday night during football. You can watch that on /home.com. But I want to give a shout out to HT, who did this article breaking down the trailer. So if you like to dive into the little details, there's a bit of debate here of Carol Danvers, it turns out, is she's part Kree. But you see her bleeding here, and the Krees usually bleed a blue color, and this blood, some people think it's green, some people think it's blue. What do you guys think? Have you seen the blood?
It is blue blood with a greenish tint. I stand by it. I will not budge.
I think it's green blood with a bluish tint. No, I really don't know. I feel like we both were talking about this morning. It really looks like a mixture of the two to me. So I would not be surprised if it's actually more clear in the real movie what color it really is, and Marvel just changed the color grading for that shot to get us to speculate about it now, because they know that they can just feed the nerd beast and have us talk about this stuff for a long time. Yeah.
Well, some people are debating if she's part Skrull. Is she really a Kree? There's a lot of interesting details in this breakdown. You should check it out on /home.com. In May, I got to visit the set of Captain Marvel, which is shooting here in Los Angeles, and you'll be hearing about that more in the next couple months. But for now, we're allowed to play our interview with Brie Larson from the set. But before we get to that, because something needs to be set up here, I'm going to play for you a little clip from our interview with Samuel L. Jackson from set, talking about Brie.
What has been your impression of what Brie has done with the role in terms of like the physical demands that it's entailed? This is new territory for her.
Physical demands. Woo. Let me see. When was it? I think about a year ago, Brie started working out, and the girl that I did Kong and Unicorn Store with is not this person. She's like 5% body fat now. And she used to send me workout videos, which were like crazy dope workout videos. But she was, the first one she sent me, she was lifting, what was she lifting, like 100 pounds. She was doing this thing with a waist lift, about 100 pounds. The last one she sent me was 350. And, you know, she does chin-ups, and she sent me a video of her pushing a Jeep up a hill. You know, it's pretty amazing stuff. You know? So she's made a distinct transformation that, you know, I don't think a lot of people would be willing to do, and it's a huge commitment to do stuff like that. When I was doing Tarzan with Alexander, well, he would come to work at like 4 in the morning and go work out, and then he would eat, and then he would do his cardio, and then we would start to shoot. And every time they said cut, somebody was putting a weight in his hand. Like he was doing curls, or he was doing push-ups. You know, Brie's sort of like that, you know, at this point in her development, that she can actually do all that stuff. I mean, it's kind of crazy. Let me see. No, that's the Jeep.
Right now, Sam is pulling up a video of Brie Larson sent to him on his phone.
Go. See, that's her pushing the Jeep up the hill.
Keep going, right there. Keep going. You got it. It's moving. Let's go. Keep it.
Wow.
Go. Keep going. One foot right there. Good. Keep going.
Nuts.
That's
Don't stop. That's great. You got the momentum. Here we go.
crap.
Killing it.
Go.
Yeah, right? Wow. Had to find a better one.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
But then he pulled up another video. Aerosmith's Sweet Emotion playing in the background, and Brie pushing up a weight that looks comically big, almost like one of those fake weights that you see in cartoons.
Here we go.
Whoa.
Wow. You got it going on. So, yeah, I'm impressed with what she did.
And later on the set visit, we got to talk to Captain Marvel herself, Brie Larson. She was in between takes on a very busy day. We got her for just a little bit of time. And as she sat down, someone mentioned the clip that Sam had shown us. Here is our on-set interview with Brie Larson.
Hey, Brie, Sam showed us these crazy videos of you doing, like...
Oh my gosh. He showed those to you too?
Here's his favorite thing.
I can't believe it. I feel like I'm close to 100 people that have come up to me and been like, I saw this video that you sent Sam. I'm like, it's so embarrassing.
Yeah,
I sent that to him in private. He actually showed the person that was next to him on a plane too. Which I found out later. Like, oh, I sat next to Sam when you sent that video and he showed it to me. I was like, why?
I think he feels very proud.
I know. He knows that it was, I came from humble beginnings.
Whose idea was it for you to push a Jeep up a hill?
It was a joke. It was a joke with my trainer, Jason Walsh, that I wanted to be able to, like, we were joking about it that, like, well, you know, if I'm going to go for it, because I spent 9 months training with him ahead of time, and I was getting super strong. I was like, well, she can, like, move planets, so the least I could do is, like, move a car. And so I thought it was going to be, I'm trying to remember how long we had trained together for, maybe 5 or 6 months at that point. And I just showed up in the gym one day, and he was like, all right, let's do it. And I pushed the car, yeah. And it wasn't as hard as I thought, which was kind of crazy. There was someone in the front seat in case, for some reason, like, the car's in neutral, but it's going uphill. And I pushed it for a minute. Someone was in the car in case I, like, crapped out, and so it wouldn't, like, run me over. There was someone waiting there to put their foot on the brake. It does? Oh, because there was, it's more weight. I didn't even think about it like that. Totally didn't think about that. I was like, it's safe. Don't try it at home. Like, really don't. It's really probably not a safe thing to do, but it felt super satisfying, and I felt really crazy afterwards, because when you do stuff like that, I'd never lifted weights or done things until this movie like that. And so you get these, like, crazy highs, and then you're just kind of collapse onto the floor.
is there a particular sequence or something that required this much training, or is it just a personal goal of yours?
No, it really all came out of ignorance, to be honest. I didn't realize that you don't actually do your own, most people don't do their own stunts in these movies. I thought you did, and I've never been a particularly, like, elegant or athletic person. I'm just an introvert with asthma, and felt like I needed to be able to do that. I just thought, I don't want to be on set and them asking me to do things and I don't know how to do it. So I started training as soon as I could, which was like right after I wrapped. It's basically started like right as I wrapped picture, like locked picture on the film that I directed. I then went into that, which then turned into 9 months of training. And 9 months of like just training and 3 months of stunt training with the stunt team, where we spent 2 hours every day, 5 days a week. And it wasn't until everyone just like went along with it and was like, cool. And it wasn't until we like started shooting and I started doing all my own wire work stunts and flips and stuff that people were like, now we'll tell you, like, nobody actually does this. We just didn't want you to stop. But now that you've kind of accomplished this thing, like, we don't normally do this. And I was like, oh. But I love it. I mean, it definitely makes things more complicated in certain ways, because I could be taking a lot more naps than I am. I could just be like, Renee and Joanna, got it. I'm going to go eat some cake. But instead, it's really become a huge part of how I learned more about her and became her and embodied her, was through that. It was through discovering my own strength. Like, a pretty amazing thing.
Can you tell us a little bit about her personality, especially in this scene? Because she was being, a little sassy. Maybe has a little bit of an ego to her. Is that how you look at it?
I mean, I think she has an ego, but in like a healthy way. She doesn't have an unrealistic expectation of herself. She just owns that she's really good and really skilled, which feels good to play. She also has an incredible sense of humor, makes fun of herself, makes fun of other people, has no issue if someone makes fun of her. So I will say that like this character is probably the most dynamic character that I've ever played. Like, there's the most range. As of now, you'll see what the movie is, but as of now, it's been the most range I've ever played a character. I've had to go through every emotion possible with her. And a lot of this movie, although it has like great comedy in it, there's also like real depth to it and like emotion. So I think that the film will have a lot, which for me, it's like, that's what I want. Like, I want to see complicated female characters. I want to see myself, which is like not a simple person. Like, I'm surprised myself constantly by like what's happening and what's coming up. So hopefully that's what comes out on screen.
How has the part challenged you as an actress? What are the things where you found yourself, oh, this is really testing my limits?
Well, the general answer is just getting through a movie like this is a real challenge of everything, of mind, body, and spirit, because it's a long one. And because I added in the physical side to it, it's like doing like a triathlon or something. So there's some days where I'm like fight sequence for 3 days, and then at the end of the third day, after I've like been punching and kicking, and then it's like, okay, now we're gonna do this one piece where you're like crying and it's emotional, and you're like, whoa, this all feels, and it moves so fast, and there's so much that at a certain point you just sort of have to trust your instincts. And
has it felt to be the lead character in the first female-led Marvel movie?
I don't know how it's any different. And to be honest, I don't want it to feel different. Kind of over the like first female blah blah blah, and like, wow, maybe women can actually do the same things that dudes can do. Like, what a crazy concept. You know what I mean? It's like, I feel like the more we talk about it, the more we perpetuate the myth that like it's an impossible task. It's like, no, if it wasn't like that before, it's because it was wrong. That was just wrong. Now we're just doing what's natural.
From what we saw today, it looks like you're like grabbing something at your neck. Is there something to that, or did you just have like an itch?
I just had an itch. Yeah.
It's itchy.
It's very, very itchy. Yeah, the costume's very, very itchy.
I think like you're totally right about like perpetuating this idea of like women just doing stuff when actually they've been doing it for like, especially in Hollywood, for like hundreds of years. want the female audience to like come away with, rather than that kind of stuff? Like, is there anything in particular you're excited to see, or?
No, I it doesn't matter what I make. I feel really firmly that like art is made to be enjoyed and interpreted, and you get what you need out of it. Like, my favorite books I've read multiple times in my life, and they mean something totally different to me every time I read them. Art isn't made to be processed and labeled and like organized in the way that we do it now. I even have a hard time with the idea of like genre, and that we place value based off of like, well, it's really good for this kind of movie. It's like, what does that even mean? I don't understand. Like, it'll be what it is, and I think there's going to be a lot there for people to digest and feel, and hopefully it'll be the movie that you want to revisit again and again, and as life goes on, it'll have more to it. Like, I just want to make art that lasts. I want to make art that you grow with. That's all.
We heard that Kelly Sue DeConnick is consulting on the movie, which is really exciting.
Yeah.
I'm assuming talk to her. Could you share some advice or stories, or just how she's helped you get into Carol a little better?
Gosh, like, I have to admit that like talking with her was like so surreal. I kind of feel like I just blacked out. I felt really nervous because it's this thing that this woman that she created that I feel very certain she knows way better than I do. So I just was so honored to receive her blessing and to see how excited she was, and that felt like a relief to me, because she pushed this forward. We wouldn't be here without her, really, and I'm so grateful for that character that she created, and now we're just kind of following the breadcrumb trail that she made,
Can you talk to us about the relationship between Carol and Maria, and how Monica might view Carol?
And how what?
Monica might view Carol?
How Monica might view Carol. Did you hear that question? Is it okay to answer?
If she can talk about the relationship between Carol and Maria, and how Monica might view Carol?
I mean, you talk about Marie. I mean, that relationship with Marie as far as that, but I think we just stop it at that.
Okay. We're all learning what we can talk about. I think the Maria dynamic is really important in this movie. She's like the representation of love in this film. And it is something that I'm very proud of, that the love relationship, and it is a deep love relationship, is not by the same lustful definition that we usually attribute to movies of this size. That it's more complex, and also I think like more meaningful than most love relationships that I see in films like this. And Maria as a character is an incredible badass in her own way. And they are equals. And I think seeing two women that have a playful competitiveness while also like mutual respect and care, and have gone through so much together, there's a lot of history, and are just like best friends, is something that I'm excited to see, because uncomplicated sort of female friendships are sort of rare to see. And I have a lot of them in my life, and so to be able to bring that on screen with someone with Lashana, who's just so crazy, talented and smart and beautiful and wonderful, and is doing her own part to make sure that there are things in the movie that are her own that she's creating, is just awesome.
Guys, we got time for one last question.
You were talking about how you're tired of everyone talking about, okay, this is the first female movie, or et cetera, et cetera. But then this year we had Black Panther, which was huge, and the reaction, we all knew what the money would make, but then there was this other side who was like, oh, it's gonna make this amount of money. So are you excited or ready for the reaction that Captain Marvel is gonna get?
I'm not ready. I hope I'm not ready.
Yeah.
Because I want to be, if it is something, then I want to be surprised, and I don't want to have expectation, because I'm not in it for that. Mm-hmm. I didn't make this movie for any of those things so that I could attach a numerical value to it.
Well, not about, but just the inspiration that comes with it.
Even that is like not up to me, you know, like you don't get to decide if you're an inspiration to people or not. And the idea of like, I've had since I've agreed to do this role, people say like, oh, well, you'll be a role model, blah, blah, blah. I'm just gonna do what feels true to me, and if people want to tag along, they can, and if they don't, they can bounce, and that's cool. Like, I'm not gonna go out of my way to do things in order to be something to people. All of my heroes were just unapologetically themselves, and they were flawed at times, and that's okay. And so for me, it's part of who Carol is too. It's like, she's flawed. She's not perfect. So in order for me to feel comfortable stepping into this position, I have to accept my humanness and like remind everybody that I'm a human and I'm an artist and I just want to make art, and that's really it.
And there you have it, our full interview with Brie Larson. You can read the full thing on slashfilm.com. You can find all the articles we talked about on today's podcast on slashfilm.com and linked in the show notes. Ben, if people want to find more of your work, where can they find you?
You can find me writing at slashfilm.com, and you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Ben Pears.
Jacob, where can we find you?
I'm on slashfilm.com every single day, and I'm on Twitter where I'm at Jacob S. Hall.
You can find me at SlashFilm on all social media. You can find this podcast, SlashFilm Daily, published every weekday on iTunes, Google Play, Overcast, Spotify, all the popular podcast apps. Please feel free to send us your feedback, questions, comments, concerns to us at peter@slashfilm.com. And please go to our iTunes page. Write us a 5-star review. You know, write a couple sentences out. It means a lot. Spread the word. Tell your friends. We'll see you tomorrow.